Well, hello, welcome to Round the Table Live with Christian Concern. I'm Tim Dieppe, and today we are talking about conversion therapy. And before we get going, I wanted to ask you, what do you think conversion therapy is? How would you define it? If you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, you can put a comment in there and we can see it, and I'd be interested to see what your views are on that. But today, I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Davidson, special guest Mike Davidson of Core Issues Trust. Thank you, Mike. Great to see you. And also Andrea Williams, Chief Executive of Christian Concern. Now, what is conversion therapy? Well, I can see Paul Huxley's put something in there saying conversion therapy is a made-up term to slander legitimate conversations about sexuality and gender. Would you agree with that, Mike?
I think that's very accurate.
Yeah. It's kind of a fake term, kind of intended to insult in a way. You don't use that term at all for what you do you, Mike?
No, I think this is a weaponizing term, actually. It's aiming to achieve something politically. It has absolutely no relevance, really, in terms of the work that many counselors, psychotherapists, and pastors across the world are doing in supporting people who want to live according to the values that are important to them.
Yeah, so you're trying to help people achieve their own goals in terms of these issues, and wanting have struggles with sexuality or temptations, that kind of thing, identity issues, and you're trying to help people with that. That's what it is really here. And so the government has changed its mind a few times, or Rishi Sunak has anyway. So conversion therapy just a few weeks ago was, we were told there's going to be a draft bill coming up and it would come under scrutiny and so on. And then it was announced, or it was reported in the media, that Rishi Sunak had decided to axe conversion therapy, and he wasn't going to include it at all because it's too controversial, leave it out. So we thought, well, that's good news. And then it was reported it was back in the King's Speech again, because the Chief Whip, Simon Hart, had said, no, you really must include it, otherwise you'll have lots of problems. And then just as of last week, or even this week, the latest is that it's back out of the King's Speech again, because 40 MPs wrote to the Prime Minister and told him, no, we're going to rebel against this. Andrea, what is going on? Why is there such a lot of flip-flopping around this issue?
Well, it's absolute chaos. It's absolute chaos. What's going on in part is a lack of moral and courageous leadership. What's going on is that the so-called conversion therapy labeling is, as Mike has said, it's a weaponizing term to achieve a political aim. And everything that Mike has just described, and everything that he and his organizations do, is about helping people who want it to access therapy, to live according to their own conscience, according to what it is that they're seeking to achieve, against their own moral and religious framework. This is what counts. This is what counselling is. The idea, and what it essentially does is this so-called conversion therapy, the banning of conversion practices or therapy. What it does is actually remove that access to talking therapy, potentially even criminalizes it. So it is no wonder that there are still, and for this we thank God, sufficient right-thinking people in Parliament who can go to the Prime Minister and say, this doesn't work, it's deeply illiberal, you're banning free speech, you're banning people's consciences. So that's no wonder. And I also want to say thank you to Christian Concern supporters. Thank you to Core Issue supporters, IFTCC supporters, and also the other organisations that have been working in this space. For we have been working for years. We've been bringing presentations, we've been bringing testimonies, we've been bringing legal opinions to parliamentarians, we've published social science research, we've sent all of this and put it into Parliament to explain why this would be a deeply draconian and deeply cruel law, with potentially criminalizing people like Mike.
Yes, well, we sent a legal opinion to all MPs, didn't we, just early this summer, and with a covering letter and a book as well about this. So we have done quite a lot of work on it and spoken to MPs about it as well. Mike, what's your thinking about where we stand on this politically at this point?
I have lots of thoughts. I worry that the issue may, for the time being, rest because of the political upheaval generally. And as we approach an election, I'm not sure the root issues have been dealt with. So they may not do it now, but of course, later governments are going to have a go. I feel the tragedy through all of this, that there's a kind of polarizing that has happened, those who are for and against. And in between are ordinary men and women who just want to get on with their lives. They want the freedom to be able to speak to knowledgeable pastors in the first instance and knowledgeable counselors who can work through this. But because of the the quietening effect or the dampening that has arisen through all of this, through the fear that has been instilled particularly into professionals and church leaders, this group are not receiving the attention they need to. And it really does impact on their lives and how they go about their business.
And it's worth remembering, Mike, as well, isn't it, that there already is a professional ban on conversion therapy that is agreed to by the NHS and all professional counselling organisations and so on. And you yourself have been refused professional accreditation, and some other counsellors have had sting operations against them on this. So it's already very, very difficult for people to access the help they want in this area. Isn't that true?
That is the truth. But I have another fear as well, that there'll be a great resounding shout about the fact that, yay, conversion therapy isn't going to happen in this parliamentary session. And I fear that it is possible for some groups to just revert to how it's always been. And that is that we don't really know what to do with these people. We either err on the side of thinking that in compassion, all we do is affirm them, or we reject them and give them no place in terms of growing and having a community that they can belong to.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not claiming some kind of specialist knowledge here. What I am saying is we need to do a lot of work as concerned communities, wherever we are, that will know how to deal with these people in the way that empowers them to find the help that they want. And simply conceding to the fact that they feel gay, and this feels very natural in their lives, is actually the very worst thing that you can do. Or, on the other hand, to say to somebody who said, I am out of the gay world, I'm not going in that direction, and then to treat them with some kind of suspicion as though, they're inauthentic or they are just simply repressing something, is hugely damaging. So we need communities who are well informed and empowered to be able to help people in genuine ways.
And Andrea, I've been encouraged really that there's been, I think, much more recognition of the problems of banning conversion therapy. It's interesting to see an Observer editorial saying we shouldn't be banning this, and Unheard and various other people as well. It's become, and Sex Matters, and Free Speech Union, various other people. There seems to be a gathering momentum, whereas just a few years ago, nobody wanted to say they were opposed to banning conversion therapy. Now more and more people are recognizing it. Are you encouraged by this?
Yes, because it's a false political cruel term that look, for anything, the term that it conjures up, as we know, is sort of electroshock treatment, this kind of thing. We know that anything that they want to place upon people that are actually doing genuine talk therapy as some kind of conversion therapy is all the kind of thing that would be caught entirely by the criminal law already. You know, and so the point about all of that is that it's just a smokescreen in order to silence and put fear into those who genuinely want to help and reach out to that group that Mike is actually talking about. So yeah,
I
Mike.
agree. It's great to see that the tide is turning to some extent, but in the meantime, where do people go for training? Where do people go to get information that has not become politicized? Where do they get, we have lost in the syllabuses and in the curriculum of professional training in this country, any kind of input that is balanced. And that is going to take a long time to correct itself. So even if things backed off completely, we are still in a vacuum. And that's what needs to be given attention to. That is why arguments that simply say that this is an offense to the gospel are incomplete. Of course, it's an offense to the gospel. Of course, the church, in my view, has been asleep as the mental health bodies in this country have brought this thing in undercover.
That's it.
But if we don't start providing the way forward for professionals to be able to explore and inquire into this area, we're not going to develop the expertise that we need. And the situation is worse than it's ever been before because of the transgender issues that have developed and have taken over the culture. So we are in a worse place than we were before. And it's not just going to come right by freedom to be able to preach this. We have to have the same freedom in the professions and in all the institutions that will allow people to be authentic about what they want to seek in this area of leaving homosexual practices, feelings, attractions, the whole lot.
Let me say on that, can I just respond? And here I want to commend Mike Davidson. I want to commend all that he has done over many years now, well over a decade that I have known Michael, and the work that he has been doing. I want to commend him because he has stood and he has served these people. He is the one that really, he together with other therapists are the ones that have been at the hard end of this culture that would shut therapists down, such as Michael, as a result of the Memorandum of Understanding, first in 2013, which said that only gay-affirming therapy, so-called gay-affirming therapy would be possible, prohibited any other. Other bodies, even the Association of Christian Counsellors, which I think may have recently changed its name, adopted these Memorandum of Understanding. So there was no professional body that counsellors could go to, but counsellors need a cover. Counsellors need an umbrella in order to be able to practice, in order for them to be insured and to have a body that will stand with them. And so it has been incredibly isolating. The church is also, and we love the church, is sadly not understood. And in a culture which is sexually broken, and where pastors are so tired because of the pastoral fallout of a broken world and a culture that's sexually broken, they cannot deal with all the crises that are in their congregation. And for some of these addictions, whether it's to pornography or same-sex attraction and all the exhibitions of behavior with regard to that, or being confused, genuinely confused about gender, all of these things can be served well in the church by people that are professionally qualified, and who also love the Lord Jesus. Because it's like, if you've been hurting, if you've been broken, if there are reasons why you've become addicted or are acting out in a certain way, then there's a lot of stuff to unpack in that. I absolutely believe in the radical healing, restorative power of the Lord Jesus Christ. And of course, we want the churches and the gospel and the freedom to keep on preaching that. I also believe in going to experts who know what they're doing, who can help us to unpack hurts and addictive behaviors against a gospel backdrop, if that's what we want. And Mike, you're absolutely right, because what we also need is Christians in all those institutions. So we need them in the training bodies, we need them in the academies, we need them setting the standards within the UK system and beyond. We need to be warning others across the world. But that is why today, Mike and I were in different rooms right now at a conference centre, but we are together in Poland with 200 people, more or less, from I think it's 34, is that right, Mike?
34 countries, about 240 participants at the moment.
How incredible is that, to turn the tide? And the thing is, when you're here.
So Mike, just explain explain what the IFTCC is and what this conference is, please, for us.
So the International Foundation for Therapeutic and Counseling Choice is a multidisciplinary group that is functioning in several countries around the world. It is registered in the United Kingdom, and it serves those who are in the service of supporting men and women who want to come out of homosexual practices, or who are concerned about their gender in some way. So we seek to train the trainers, and we seek to upskill professional counselors who want to go forward in terms of their training in these areas.
And this is your 9th annual conference, is that right?
This is the 9th annual conference. They often take place in Eastern Europe because that is a little bit cheaper to do. And we have to be accessible to those in Asia, in Australasia, as well as the Americas and Europe. We have people this time for the first time from Colombia, so Central and South America. Also, those from the Caribbean are coming. Unfortunately, the participants from Israel, of course, have not been able to come. And several African countries, Rwanda, Kenya, Malawi, Uganda, have all been refused visas.
Tell us what happens at the conference. What are the topics? Who's talking? What kind of research is being displayed?
So the conference draws on, I would say, the best in the world professionally. So, for example, we have Dr. Quinton van Meter, who is an endocrinologist. But the significance of Quinton is that he was present when John Money was doing his work at Johns Hopkins University in the USA with the original transgender twins, if you know the story.
Yes,
so
I do.
Money really went off the rails. And Quinton van Meter was a young doctor at the time. So he has an inside story.
But Mike, some people won't know the story about these twins. Just fill us in on that.
Well, there were two twins who presented with confusion around their gender. And to cut a long story short, John Money persuaded the parents essentially to allow the young boy who wanted to be a female to act out in that way, to the point where eventually surgery was done on the one. This was some twins, and he went through this, and then he regretted this in later life and committed suicide eventually. And then his brother did the same thing. He was so traumatized by the whole thing, he also committed suicide.
Do you know, I met somebody who was taught this case as a good example of transgenderism, and without stating that they ended up committing suicide, they're very badly damaged, all this kind of stuff, as if it was a good science thing, and it obviously was awful science, really.
Yes, and it was after that, I believe, that Johns Hopkins then suspended the whole program. But of course, it was then reintroduced not so long ago. So that's the kind of individual we have. We have Professor Paul Sullins, who has done probably the most significant work yet in challenging existing research based on databases that have demonstrably misinterpreted the data. And so he's here. There are several researchers. Christopher Rosick is probably the most published author in this area. There are several who are coming from a research point of view.
So it's cutting-edge research, peer-reviewed articles and research and stuff on this whole
not
area.
only peer-reviewed, but in the case of Paul Sullins, I think the psychological journal that he publishes in is one of the third, I think is the third highest in terms of recognition in the world. So this is not Mickey Mouse material. These are serious researchers.
Yeah. And
in fact, we're actually using a lot of that research in our legal cases at this time right now. So we have a number of cases where children are socially transitioning in under 10 years of age, and and teachers are getting into trouble with regard to actually raising concerns around that. We've got a lot of we've got other cases where people are claiming that people that are same-sex attracted would be distressed if a social worker like Felix Ngole came to them because of his known views on Christianity. And this kind of minority stress theory, we're actually dealing with all the evidence that has been collated by the scientists, the researchers here at the International Foundation for Therapeutic Counselling Choice. So, this
I just
is...
say that Heather Scammell and Mark Stonge on the comments are just reminding me that with John Money, the original issue was a botched circumcision, wasn't it, Mike? And damaged genitals, and John Money persuaded them to raise this boy as a girl.
That's true.
And that was a very damaging thing for him.
Yeah, and I think that, can I just say on that, this is where what John Money was trying to do was, after a botched circumcision, what he was trying to say is that gender is a social construct.
Yes.
So we will make the boy a girl.
Mm-hmm.
We will treat the boy like a girl because of this botched, this tragic situation.
That was all trying to do.
In fact, it wasn't possible. And so similarly, today, when little boys and little girls aged 3 or 4 being taught they can be a boy or a girl or are gender confused, and we affirm it, and we dress them in dresses, we are what that early experiment showed. Now, what that is that it's disastrous, in fact.
Yes.
But that's what we are actually doing in society. This is what we are teaching.
And some people are pointing out that's the real conversion therapy, isn't it? I mean, I think there was a comment here earlier saying the real conversion therapy is basically slicing and dicing bodies to resemble the opposite sex. I mean, that's kind of
there's a question also from it was also from Jackie. Mike, she says the LGBT atheists are stating that Mike Davidson, I think you need to answer this, Mike, that admits that there's no evidence anyone has ever changed from being LGBTQ. No, but so this is a question here. So I think it'd be great for you. I mean, we've got a lot of people here at this conference who have actually changed. I was speaking at breakfast with a couple of wonderful women in their 30s, and their stories are just, they are inspiring. You can see that, just how transformed they are and how content they are now. So, Mike, perhaps you can tell us.
The reality is, we know that there is spontaneous change, that this is not necessarily wedded to Christian ideology. It's just a fact that some people just move away from unwanted homosexuality and they go in a different direction, because the fact is sexuality among many humans is fluid. It can go in different directions. But we have become so attached to this idea of orientation that cannot change, that you're gay or you're straight, and that's how you're made, and that you cannot move in any other direction. So no, I totally
there are many thousands. There are thousands and
people.
thousands, aren't there, Mike, of ex-LGBT identifying?
We've got X Out Loud. We've got the book.
There are
we've got
thousands
the
of them,
testimonies.
and there are probably some in your church. You know, most people don't talk about it because they're ashamed about it, but there are lots and lots and lots of people who have formerly experienced same-sex attraction of some kind and now very happily heterosexually married, and that assertion by the secular society or the secularists is completely ridiculous.
They're confusing me perhaps with Alan Chambers, who made that claim when Exodus International was closed unilaterally against many of the board's wishes at that time by Alan Chambers, who decided to go in a different direction. So no, that we can't support that. We know people change. Many people who change don't ever talk about it. And why should they? Because they have gone in a direction that is completely successful to them. That you wouldn't expect them to talk about it.
I noticed Mark's gone here.
And sorry, can I say this, Andrea?
Yeah.
We only have to look at the government's NatSol statistics to realize that there is an almost natural progression towards change.
Yeah.
If you look at the statistics, people identifying as gay at one point very often move in a different direction and are found to be practicing in heterosexual relationships. So even their own statistics show that change is taking place in the population. We're waiting for the most recent publication to see whether that is still an ongoing trend, but it's there.
It's there. And I think what I also want to say, because I want to speak to the church here, really, to Christians here as well, is that I really believe it's been one of the joys of my life to know and work with Mike Davidson over such a long period now. But the truth is that for the church is that we have slightly bought the cultural narrative generally. And so, Jesus Christ is all about change and transformation and beauty and rescue and love and fulfillment and moving away from things that harm us and things that are not good for us, and turning away from our sin by the blood of Christ on the cross. But what we have allowed to come into Bible believing churches is this notion that we are born gay or born gender confused, born in the wrong. We've even allowed this to come in, but particularly this born gay, and that we cannot change. Now, this is a prevailing narrative by many that have access to the training programs, particularly in conservative evangelical circles. So the way in which our pastors and our young people are struggling, it's as if they're being told, you will be confined to these same-sex attractions because actually you are gay. When in fact, what we can say is you are not defined by these attractions. You are not defined by this. Jesus has a plan and a purpose for you, and he defines you. Move away from sinful desires and turn to him to find you who you truly are in Christ.
Yeah. So I noticed Mark Stonge there in the comments said there are tens of thousands of people in the Reddit group detransitioners. So anyway, there are many people who've changed, and that's great. Now, but Andrea, we've got a dedicated website that we've launched on this called freetotalk.org. Tell us about that, Andrea.
This website is bespoke. It's essentially like a pop-up website in response to the conversion therapy ban bill. And it's basically a one-stop shop to help us specifically access materials that we can take into Parliament, we can take to our pastors to equip people to resist the conversion therapy ban. We have been successful, I believe.
And I can see that our we're scrolling through it there on the screen for you. Headlines like "Talking isn't harmful, even if it doesn't work," but actually it generally does work. The evidence of harm is missing. It's not going to just affect professionals; it'll affect you as well. And there is a legal briefing on the subject there on the website explaining how it would breach human rights, because it's basically banning consensual conversations. That's what it's about. And there's also a parliamentary briefing which covers the key arguments about this, that the government said anything physical is already illegal. So it's just about talking. So it is specifically about banning conversations. And I think that's all really well explained there. Also, there's 2 surveys showing that a ban is unpopular with voters. The first survey says 70% support freedom to access any type of talking therapy. And the second showed that when asked their top policy priorities, only 4% of people put conversion therapy in their top 5 policy priorities. So it's all very good evidence. Do ask your MP to go and look at that website. Send them the briefing. You can download it from there. Talk about it. There's some good research and good references, and it's all very well written and articulated on that website. Do make use of it.
Yes, so that is there to serve you to resist this ban that's continued to apply pressure right now, so that this does not get introduced by this government in any shape or form. We have to stay ready, because if a Labour Party comes in, then this will be something that could well be pushed through there almost immediately. So we have to stay very alert. We have to keep on understanding the evidence, not take our foot off the pedal. Of course, as I said, it's dedicated for in order to resist this ban on conversion therapy. But let's also, if you want really deep dives, really in-depth material, then do be sure to visit the IFTCC website, where again those papers, those materials that Mike Davidson has been talking about are all available. We often use them. You'll find a lot of them on our website too, or pointing to them. But do get on board with the IFTCC. Sign the declaration. There's a declaration. Be amazing to get more signatures joining up with this global movement that we have. So go to the IFTCC website and join that movement.
I think if people are interested in looking at the more serious curriculum material, they should go to IFTCC Learning, where all of the sessions, I think there are 36 sessions in this particular conference. By the end of November, they should all be uploaded with learning outcomes and quizzes that will test a person's understanding in an attempt to really upgrade what we offer in terms of training.
Fantastic resources. Do make use of it. Do look at all of that stuff. It's really very, very helpful. And do make use of that website, freetotalk.org. And I know that my friends have put it on the link there, and I think you'll find that very, very helpful. Well, listen, thank you very much, Mike and Andrea. I hope the conference goes brilliantly in Poland and you have a great time, and I'm sure you'll come back with lots of great information and learning. I hope you get to share it with us. I expect we can see it on the IFTCC website. And thank you for watching and listening, and do stay in touch. Follow us and like us and various social media and stuff, and look forward to connecting with you again next week. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.